Welcome back to House of R. I'm Joanna Robinson. Mallory Rubin is here, and joining us today for our first and I think only installment in Crisp Nolan Fall. It's our own Chris. Chris Ryan's here. Hello.
Wearing a fall sweater. I thought I would dress up as Tom Glencarny for this podcast.
Because we are doing Dunkirk. We are doing, Chris, is this your favorite Nolan movie, Dunkirk?
It's really close. I think it's the movie that I most emotionally connect with.
Oh my God. Are we going to make Chris cry on a House of R podcast?
It's entirely possible.
Dare to dream. Dare to dream. All right, listen. It's fear. It's greed. It's fate pushed through the bowels of men. And it's a podcast right after this break. This episode of House of R is presented by Target. Have you heard? Stranger Things is back at Target, and it's time to gear up for the Upside Down.
Head back to the 80s with awesome exclusives like the Unreal Demogorgon popcorn bucket, the fog over Hawkins candle that reveals secret messages, and the Demogorgon bundle box that's full of cool surprises.
New items are dropping all season long, so prepare for one last adventure at Target. All right, so a couple things, a little bit of business to get through before we start making Chris Ryan cry on a podcast. Really can't wait for that moment in our lives. Later this week, Mallory and I will be covering, speaking of crying, Wicked for Good. And the Midnight Boys will also be covering Wicked for Good, perhaps with fewer tears. Also a reminder that Mallory and I are continuing our Best of the Century So Far series with Best Fights of the Century so far. Next week, we've gotten some great, I already don't know what I'm going to do. There are too many options. And we've gotten some great submissions from our listeners so far. But I'm feeling anxious about it. How are you feeling, Mallory, about Best Fights of the Century so far?
I'm on the record from last week's podcasting that I think we might have to consider narrowing our consideration set a bit to make this exercise achievable, but we'll see. We'll see. We always say, should we expand to 50? And then we do 10 and it's fine, you know?
We're doing 10 each. It's very stressful. Battles are eligible, duels are eligible, verbal fights are eligible. All of those things are eligible.
Ooh, interesting.
Somehow we're going to do 10 of the last 25 years.
So you guys can throw like Anatomy of a Fall fight into this fights.
We're doing House of R content only, so like
genre properties, but like.
So you guys didn't see the post-credit sequence of Anatomy of a Fall.
Exactly. It's all in the stinger.
The Falliverse? Yeah. So hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com if you have any nominations for Best Fights in the Century so far. Mallory Rubin.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a lot of good content coming from us, not to mention Stranger Things is right around the corner. How should people keep track of all of that?
Here's what I would recommend. Follow the pod. Follow House of R on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. You can watch full video episodes of House of R on the Spotify app. Incredible. You can also follow the Ringerverse YouTube channel. Follow the Ringerverse on the social media platform of your choosing. I'm not here to tell you what that should be. It's up to you. And email us because the inbox is open. As Joe noted, your emails have been bountiful this season. Keep them coming for Best of the Century, for Stranger Things, for everything else that we have cooking. What are your favorite moments of the year? That pod's not too far away. Percy Jackson is around the corner. I will be forcing Joanna to see Avatar Fire and Ash in mere weeks. It's all happening here at the House of R. Keep the emails coming.
Thanks for the snort of solidarity from Chris. I really appreciate that.
If you know, you know.
Spoilers for Dunkirk.
Yes.
Yeah, spoilers for World War II.
Spoilers for history.
Yeah.
The Germans lost. The enemy lost, as you would put it in this movie. This film, directed and written by Christopher Nolan. Nolan initially wanted to do the entire film improvised. And his lovely wife and producing partner said, maybe not. And but it's one of his lightest scripts in terms of dialogue and just length. So that it premiered July 21st, 2017. It was a $100 million budget, looks like more, and worldwide box office of $533.7 million, which for a World War II movie in the summer is, I think, my memory when this came out in July is everyone's like, why isn't this a fall movie? Why isn't this like sort of like a hardcore Oscar contender? Why are we opening this in July? And then the world laughed at us because this was, of course, right when we needed Dunkirk. And then just on the Oscars front, I'm going to come back to this a little bit, but this is 8 nominations, 3 wins. Got nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Cinematography, Best Score, Best Production Design, but it won both the sound categories. Remember when there were 2 sound categories and editing. So that it was like one of those, we'll give it to you on a technicality, Christopher Nolan. But the fact that he was nominated in these sort of heavy hitter categories paved the way for the Oppenheimer sweep that came several years later. The first question I have for you, and this is, Mallory was so curious about Chris's answer to this. Chris, Ryan, where were you in 2017 and what do you remember about first seeing Dunkirk?
I was working at The Ringer and we were based in Hollywood. And I believe that when I saw Dunkirk, I saw it with Mallory at the ArcLight.
That's right. So happy right now.
She was so certain you would not remember seeing it with her.
I was positive. Because
I gotta tell you, I really
infamously don't remember seeing Infinity War together.
I remember actually, Mallory reminded me that we got promotional hats as we walked out of the movie theater, which while adoring the film,
you don't wear the hat?
Really envision myself wearing a Dunkirk hat around town. Yeah.
I'm honestly shocked by that.
I now wish, I think enough time has passed that it would be cool. But there was something sort of funny about like the stolen valor of being like, here I am at like a 2017 era LA eatery wearing my Dunkirk swag. But I did see it with Mal.
Have you worn your Task hat that you got from the Task event that you
Only
moderated?
in the bath. Yeah.
Okay, great. That's where it belongs, I think. Mallory, Rubin, what do you remember about seeing Dunkirk with Chris Ryan at the ArcLight?
I remember the just sheer pleasure of the movie-going experience. We had a crew from The Ringer go see this movie. I think the day it came out, right, Chris?
Yes.
I mean, we were there minute 1. You know the line in the movie, Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, sweetest sound you could hear out here. It's like that was how everybody felt about just the announcement of another Chris Nolan movie, the fact that Dunkirk was going to be a thing in our lives. We walked over to the ArcLight, grabbed our hats, saw the movie. We laughed, and Chris was like, I'm forever changed. I don't know if he actually said that, but that's my memory of how the experience felt. It was a banger from minute 1. I love this movie. I love Christopher Nolan's movies. Not sure if that's come up in our prior 3 podcasts during Hot Nolan Summer. But this one's a banger. I just think it's an absolute masterpiece in almost every respect. And I'm thrilled to have Chris here with us today to celebrate a film that I know means so much to him. What a treat.
I know. Chris, thanks for joining us.
Of course. No, this is this is an easy film for me to talk about, but complicated for me to articulate how I feel about it. It's it means a lot to me. I don't know why. I think I was like very, very into Nolan. Inception's one of my favorite movies of the century. Like it's not like I think my relationship to the Batman movies is a little bit less like over the top as maybe people would assume, or a lot of people I know. I love Dark Knight, but it's not something I spend a ton of time thinking about. This is a movie that I revisit quite often. We got a chance to do Dunkirk with Quentin Tarantino on Rewatchables, which was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had, but it also opened my eyes to a lot of like the technical aspects of it. But Tarantino was like really emotional about this too. I think people respond to this movie on a pretty deep level.
Do you think that's everyone, or is it helpful to be someone who's like really into war movies or World War II sort of history or anything like that?
I think that it certainly helps if you're a fan of Nolan's storytelling style, especially within this film, but the one that he has employed over multiple movies, which is to manipulate linear storytelling and manipulate time structures and to tell films in a much more musical style rather than a 3-act style. If you like that, or if you're into that kind of maybe that heavy-handedness when it comes to the way he's constructing his stories, then I think it really works for you. I do know people who are just like, I hated that. I did not like, and we'll probably get very in-depth into this conversation about the week, day, hour structure of Dunkirk and the collapsing of the timelines. But I know people who are like that. I felt like he was trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole.
Yeah, there are definitely people who I think felt confused by it. One critique I remember is, I can't tell anyone apart. And I'm like, oh man, then you weren't in the Band of Brothers trenches with us when you had to track. all of the actors in Band of Brothers.
31 people named Watkins. Yeah.
Exactly. Something I thought was so on that note, something I thought was so interesting in reading the screenplay for this, which has been like a really fun exercise in doing these Nolan movies and then reading the screenplays. And this one is the closest in its like original iteration to what winds up on the screen. But the opening of it says like, we see 6 Tommies, and basically they're all like, he names all of them Tommy in the script, and it's just sort of like, just by luck, this one happens to make it over that first fence and into the future. But this idea of like, we start with 6 Tommies. So this idea of like, I can't really tell them apart, or the constant Christopher Nolan critique of, are there actual characters in these movies? It's like that's rather the point, especially of this one. The idea of just sort of, these are blank slates with not deep backstories, so you are meant to project as much as you want or can on them, which I think is really effective.
Yeah, and like the sheer volume, we get these numbers, right? 400,000, is it 35,000, 40,000 that Churchill wants back? Yeah. How many are there? How many are going to make it off? And so the idea that like we spend time at, land, sea, air with in all 3 of our timelines with a certain set of characters, but like it could have been any of those soldiers. It could have been any of those officers. It could have been any of those people who had their pleasure yacht requisitioned by the Navy. I love that little moment at the end when Bolton and Kenneth Branagh's character is like calling out to the various ships who do make it there to say like, where are you from? And this reminder that like, okay, we've been on the Moonstone. We've been with Mr. Dawson and Peter and dear sweet departed George. But all of those other people had stories too. Everybody on the beach beyond Tommy. And I'll be calling him Gibson throughout the pod. I don't know if we want to consider that acceptable or not, even though that's his stolen name. Just feels like easier shorthand for the discussion, etc. And so, yeah, I love that aspect of it too. And I think that in general, like the spectacle of this movie, which is astonishing, and the pace of that spectacle, and obviously just the sheer gall of like the art of filmmaking and the technique on display inside of that spectacle, and the editing and the stitching together and eventual converging of the timelines, paired with that heart and the ability that the movie has to, I think, really, really showcase genuine acts of astonishing heroism with also the idea of everyday heroism, right? Is like pretty gobsmacking.
Yeah, and fear also, Mal. Like that's the thing is, I think of people. When I watch the film now, I note, with the exception of Dawson, and you could even say that Dawson allowing George or not stopping the boat and telling George to get off or whatever was also a mistake. Everybody in this film is at once like has a moment of heroism. It has a moment of not cowardice, but deep fear. And cowardice and self-preservation and self-dealing, and it just goes to show you like. I think what was important for Nolan while making this was not necessarily to, tell the entire backstory of a character or talk about emotional motivation for being somewhere, but was more about how each individual can contain so many different stories inside of them. And he does a really wonderful job of conveying that without, honestly, the usual, the sort of anvil of exposition that he drags around in a lot of other movies of having to explain everything. I think he really, 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 this is the film where I feel like he trusts the viewer the most.
I think it's interesting, that we got one listener email sort of like late in the game, and I will bring that up a little bit later. But this idea that he wrote this without Jonathan, or without a collaborator, and Jonathan's, who we talked about this a lot when we talked about The Prestige. Like Jonathan's influence on the Nolan filmography is really important to me. I love sort of like his puzzle box brain, and I love some of his like his use of language is much more intricate than I think a Jonathan Less script is. But there's something perhaps freeing about doing this on his own and just saying, I am going to keep this as spare as possible on the dialogue front, on the character front. And Nolan has said this repeatedly, I'm going to really dive into the visual art of filmmaking. Filmmaking is a visual medium, and what can I convey with just the sweep of a plane over the water, or the score ratcheting up, what can I draw from Hitchcock or Murnau or all these other filmmakers who know that, like, yes, great juicy dialogue is great. Mallory and I love just like two people talking in a room. We talk about that all the time. But the idea of going to the IMAX and seeing Dunkirk and just sort of being awed by the visuals is something that I love about this film. I think is incredible.
Yeah.
So
I think on the dialogue front too, it's like obviously really notable that one of the, I think the longest like uninterrupted, I haven't actually like broken out a stopwatch to time it, though that would be appropriate in this movie, but what seems like the longest or in the running for the longest stretch of like uninterrupted speaking in the movie is reading Churchill's address in the paper at the end. So that's not even like original scripting for the story, which is fascinating and an interesting way to root this in the actual context and reality of the time. But I think the thing to me, again, as an admirer of the movie and just like everything that is on display here in terms of like the act of filmmaking, is that it doesn't ever feel like the really sparse nature of the speechifying and the dialogue is so that the visual splendor can be showy. I think it feels completely appropriate and actually wouldn't be believable if it tipped in the other direction. Now, like, I can't say what the conversation is like if you are like running to the mole to try to make your way onto a rescue vessel. And if you're in like the one destroyer a day and that's it, but stretch of this, who knows? But do I believe that in those moments where their heads are down and they're defeated and they're silent, that would be the nature of the experience in that moment? Yeah, that feels right. When Farrier, I have no doubt we'll talk about basically every Farrier stretch in great detail, part of why CR is here, obviously. But like one of the most, not to tip our categories, but like one of the most breathtaking sequences, I think, is after Collins, Fortis leader, down, Collins, down. There's literally no one to talk to, right? Yeah. And so that silence and the stillness and the fact that all you have to understand and convey the experience is Tom Hardy's breath. Or like the darting of his eyes.
His eyes. He's got a mask on. All you can see is his eyes.
Yeah. It's
He's
just
like,
amazing.
You didn't like my Bane? Let me show you what I can do with a mask. Yeah, there's also the sort of the plot mechanic of we can't hear Gibson talk until the reveal. Right. And so I think there are plenty of moments like when when Alex and Tommy and Gibson are sitting on the beach watching someone walk into the water or whatever. And they're in another movie, they could be like, back home, XYZ, you know what I mean? They would be talking about their backstory or what they're fighting for or what they experienced or, why Harry Styles is in the Highlanders, a thing that will plague me to the end of my days. But they don't. They just silently, and it's so effective to have them silently sitting out and looking. But I just think that's interesting that it's like you can get away with it because of what you're saying, Mallory. It does make sense that they would sit there silently and that they would not hear, even though Alex gets suspicious of him, not hear Gibson speak until he does. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also thought, honestly, when I was rewatching it just this week, it just makes sense. They're so tired. They're so defeated. There's nowhere for them to run. There's nothing militarily that they can do. There's really nothing to communicate. So much of this movie is gestures, looks, like, hey, I'm going to stand next to you. Is that okay? I don't care. But like not said, but it actually renders the film so much more real feeling because you're like, of course, like there's no left turn to make. There's the channel and then there's the battle right behind us and we're squeezed and we're waiting for boats to pick us up. Like that, it is like such a pure storytelling device. The fact that it's real just makes it, or the fact that it's history just makes it all the more extraordinary.
I think especially the sequences with Tommy and Gibson as they're sort of like executing various strategies to stay alive, schemes silently. Like I think that stuff is so compelling.
They see the stretcher that was left behind and they don't have to have a strategic conversation about the infiltration plan. There's no time. Pick it up and run. And the only thing you're running toward is Benedict from Bridgerton telling you that sound means 2 minutes, you're too late.
Yeah. Like, we got a bunch of emails from people being like, oh my God, Jack Loudon's in this? I'm like, yeah, I knew Jack Loudon was in it, but Benedict Bridgerton was the real reveal for me on this rewatch.
That was I was like, is that Benedict? That was a shot.
is. Yeah.
CR always been a trailblazer, a tastemaker. But this was, I think, one of the real, like, coming out of Dunkirk in minute one, being like, that Jack Lowden guy is about to be like one of the most electric performers in our shared experience. I think you called that on day one. And here we are, Slow Horses Hive.
Yeah, and I'm a connoisseur of of yearbook photo movies. So like movies you can go back to, like Black Hawk Down, and be like, oh my God, they got every guy who was 23 who wound up making movies for the next 20 years to be in this. And I think that Barry Keoghan and Tom Glencarney and like all these people that like have kind of been kicking around since Dunkirk, like it was a real graduation day kind of cast.
This is my Barry moment.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. George.
On the Oscar front, I just want to say, so like in terms of Mallory, is there anything else you want to say about your immediate associations with this movie in 2017 when you watched this as a bonding exercise with the Ringer colleagues? Like anything where you were at that time that sort of this struck a particular note?
No, I think we covered it. I'll say it's just been, fun to revisit in 4K and see those IMAX shots. And it's like, Joe, we've obviously been talking about lovingly in terms of the visual style of the movies we have been covering, and then from a position of abject fear when we make the steady march toward eventually having to cover Tenet. Now, I am excited to revisit Tenet. I couldn't hear Tenet, and obviously that's something we've talked about.
You guys have my number if you need somebody for Tenet.
I'm excited to revisit Tenet, a movie I could not hear a word of when I saw it for the first time, and so but that conceptually is of course very appealing to me. This is another thing where it's like, and Nolan has talked about this. Yeah, that whole thing about IMAX cameras being really loud, really not a problem if you're attaching them to a plane that's supposed to be pretty loud. So everything just really clicks into place here. I am excited to talk about this Academy Awards year, which is loaded with really good films that I love and some, puzzling results.
Yeah. Well, this is what I want to say. 2017 was really the start of me like full-time covering the award season at Vanity Fair. So I remember this season so well of like, this is the Shape of Water year. We literally just talked about Guillermo, of course. Not what I would have wanted to win Best Picture, but Call Me By Your Name is here. Get Out is here. Lady Bird is here. Phantom Thread is here. This is also the 3 Billboards year. So I had like bigger fish to fry in terms of my anti-certain movie agendas. But this is also the Darkest Hour year. So it was a real like Churchill moment that we had in history. And I think if there's like one award that I would give Dunkirk that it didn't get, it might be cinematography. But this is when Roger Deakins won for his first for Blade Runner. And it was this real like, this is the Deakins career moment. I wouldn't pick Blade Runner over this. And we didn't know that Deakins would like then win again so soon after. And then of course, Hoyt van Hoytema won for Oppenheimer. So he has his Oscar. So like, the scales of justice on award season, as long as like that person gets their Oscar eventually, I can sort of calm down about it. And so I'm not worried about Chris Nolan because he's got all of his Oppenheimer gold. But like Deakins, that was like a dominating narrative that year. Was like, it is finally Deakins' time to shine. So I get it.
I'm never getting over Guillermo del Toro. Sorry.
I agree. I as just discussed last week, I actually really like The Shape of Water, but I think this Best Director field is astonishing. Like Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird,
I think it's one of the
PTA
best
for
we've
Phantom
had in
Thread,
recent memory.
Jordan Peele for Get Out, Nolan for Dunkirk, and Guillermo for Shape of Water. That's incredible. I think it's pretty weird that Jordan Peele or Christopher Nolan didn't win Best Director this year. And I say that as someone who loves Del Toro's movies.
It's not, well, here's what I remember happening. Again, this is like my first year covering Oscars. I was like, surely not Shape of Water, surely not this sort of like genre monster movie, surely not this, that, and the other thing. And then when we went to sort of the Vanity Fair Christmas party that year and all the people who work in LA were there, every single person was like, yes, Shape of Water, yes, Shape of Water. I was blown away. And I think it just fell into that it's a movie about movies trap that often, not less and less these days, but the Academy used to be so dazzled by, right? Where they're like, the cinema is important. And that's what The Shape of Water is about. And I'm like, I guess so. So it wouldn't have been my pick, but here we are. So
I wanted to ask you guys a little bit about where you feel like this fits in Nolan's filmography. Because I was giving some thought to this. We just got, when we're recording this, we just got our first glimpses of the Odyssey production of the set or stills from the production, which
can't fucking wait for this movie.
Every single thing about this movie where I'm like, it can't be as good as it is in my head already. And I'm like, maybe it's gonna be as good as I think it's.
Like, what if it's better?
All the Matt Damon quotes where he's just like the single greatest experience I've ever had on a set.
Yeah.
And when you think, how am I gonna act like the sirens are in front of me? He just builds the sirens. That's pretty wild. Anyway, if you take out, for the sake of this sort of conversation, Memento, which is the debut and is kind of emerging out of independent cinema-ish, even though it has some pretty big names in it, but is like his like big breakout film, and then Insomnia, which is kind of his getting drafted into Hollywood a little bit. And he moves into that post-Insomnia run. He's essentially done 3 superhero movies, 3 historically rooted films, and then 3 films that I will say take place in the Nolan-verse. And I was curious whether you guys, as you've been talking about his movies, had a kind of a preference. Which one's your kind of like happy place to be of those 3 categories?
The Nolan-verse being
Inception, Interstellar, and Tenet.
Yeah.
Like happening in our world, but not really.
Right.
Now, you could argue Prestige kind of also takes place in the Nolan-verse, but I think just because of its historical grounding. Yeah.
When we did the Prestige podcast, I talked a lot about how that is my favorite Nolan movie by far. And I think we made a pretty good case of why it belongs sort of like as a House of R film in terms of the fantastical elements of it. But that one combines, there's something super heroic about it, and I don't know if that's just because Hugh Jackman and Christian Bale are there. There's something, period specific about it, and then there's something fantastical about it also, and it just feels like the best of all of the things, plus the Jonathan Nolan aspect woven in there. So that's my preferred space. But if you didn't count that, I would say the Nolan verse, this idea of Inception, and even though Tenet is not my favorite, or Interstellar, like that sort of idea of
Joe, you do know what freeholds are, right? Like, you want me to explain where you can keep your art?
Talk to me about the turnstiles, like at length, please. I would so love to hear. Mallory, what's your answer to that?
It's a great question. I think my answer is that variance is the appeal for me. Like, I think if he only lived in one of those spaces, he wouldn't be, I mean, he'd be an accomplished filmmaker, but I don't think like he would quite have the grip on the culture that he does. I think the fact that he can be so, he can operate at such a high level of not just execution, but I think ambition inside of each of those buckets is like what makes him such an interesting creator. So I mean, Inception is my favorite Nolan movie. So like if I had to pick, I would pick the Nolan verse as well. And, Prestige is in the top 3 for me. I think I'm really curious to see how much my like power ranking changes over the course of revisiting these in fairly close proximity to each other. Because I think my top 3 still feels, my top 4 I think feels pretty fixed. Inception, Dark Knight, Prestige, and Dunkirk. Could something else with like closer study knock one of those out of the top 4? I don't know. But then I'm like, that next tier is still full of movies that I really love and love thinking about and love spending time with. So I like the fact that he's interested in trying different things, but that there's still a through line in his interest in playing with time, in the examination of the achievement of men emboldened to try to make an impact on the world around them through their art or their craft, and in the mythic. I think that's present in some capacity in almost every movie. So it feels like they're of a piece with each other in terms of some sort of sensibility, even though there's a lot of stylistic variance.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, Chris.
I think that at this point in my life, I would say my top 2 are Inception and Dunkirk. In some order. I don't have like a clear favorite. I got to admit, in the last year, Tenet has been like racing into like the top 3 or 4 for me.
Wow. Upon like multiple rewatches or contemplation?
And not because I'm trying to solve it, but because I am letting it happen to me.
Because you watched it with the captions on, or no?
No, but like I the Pattinson performance and
He's
the
so good.
Aaron Taylor Johnson performance, like those two characters are two of my favorite characters in like Nolan's whole entire body of work. And I also have found Interstellar gaining
me too.
spots on me too, because I think one thing that really has charmed me is the emergence of Interstellar as like a modern classic to younger people, and seeing like at the Prince Charles in London, and I think in many places, like they'll do pretty regular Interstellar screenings that are beyond sold out and lined down the block, and people going to see it for the 5th or 6th or 7th time. Like, I think people feel like about Interstellar the way maybe like I felt about Star Wars growing up in a lot of ways, in terms of like the kind of wonder that it creates, you know?
I think it's interesting to talk about the larger filmography as we've been doing. We've been talking about, you know, we did a Batman movie, we did Inception, The Prestige, which are movies he made between Batman movies. So I think it's interesting to think about Dunkirk as something he made between Interstellar and Tenet. Interstellar made $770 million worldwide, like an incredible, massive hit. But I think there were arguments that people would make that, well, that's still in the genre space of some kind, like, you know, still thinking about Nolan inside of that box. And I think it's really important and interesting that he made Dunkirk, even though, again, we're about to make an argument about why it might fit under the House of R umbrella, but just sort of like a much more straightforward maybe as he's capable of being since Memento and Insomnia, war movie, a classic right down the middle kind of I want an Oscar movie. And it makes all this money. And that just sort of cements him as he can do anything. You know, I felt like this is a real like proving ground for him.
Yes, there was some skepticism about this going into it.
Yeah. Mallory, how about you in terms of like where this comes in the filmography?
I don't think I have really anything to add beyond what I just said about that kind of variance and what you just said about like maybe what that particular moment in the filmography and timeline does to reinforce that. I mean, I think what's increasingly interesting to me now is just thinking about why he's doing the Odyssey right now. And like, you know, the idea that somebody who is so fascinated, and this is certainly, it's present in a lot of his movies, but very present in Dunkirk, the idea that the choices anybody makes can feel like grand and like the kind of lore you would pass down. To go back to like, what if I just did the original myth? You know, the myth that is at the top of the coaching tree for all myths.
The
is
thematic
so
connections between the Odyssey and Dunkirk are going to be very strong, but we can hit that later. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. In that case, Mallory, do you want to make the case as to why Dunkirk belongs on a House of R podcast?
Well, I think that
other than we do what we want.
Yeah, exactly. I think, you know, it's our podcast and fuck off if you don't think we should cover this movie.
Are we entirely sure Bane is not in this movie? I mean,
exactly.
It's a great question.
Exactly. I mean, the mumbled garble is still there when he speaks through the
They
mask.
do expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. You know, like
there are many House of R, like House of the Dragon actors here.
Exactly.
You know,
lots of Thrones faces.
At least one Targaryen is here, looking very Targy. So
our boy Aegon is here. Chris's boy Aegon is here. You know, I think look, we're gonna do all the Nolan movies before the Odyssey, and so that's all the explanation we need. But I think undeniably the timey-wimey timeline shenanigans, and I say that as a complete and total compliment, it makes this valid as something for us to cover, because it is time travel of a sort. Are the characters time traveling? No. But are we as viewers time traveling in our understanding of how these narratives connect and how the threads of this tapestry stitch together? We are. And I think that is a fascinating, potentially disorienting, but I think mostly like riveting and awe-inspiring experience when you watch it the first time, and then something that really rewards further revisiting and study, where you can have like the clarity of, okay, when we're glimpsing the Minesweeper in this moment, we know, you know, and the puzzle, it's a puzzle. It is a puzzle, and it starts to fit together that way too. So I think it belongs here, and if anybody disagrees, then hopefully the fact that Chris is present is enough to distract them.
Chris, how does the time structure work for you?
I have thought about this a lot, especially after this last viewing. So I'm a huge World War II film fan. I've watched as many as any one person needs to, and then more. And a couple of examples of movies that I think are beloved by me, but would be a lot more of a chore for a modern viewer, especially, are movies like The Longest Day or A Bridge Too Far, which are two films about one's about D-Day and the other is about Market Garden, which was the sort of D-Day before D-Day. It was the attempt to invade Europe that failed in the Netherlands, and those are TikToks. Those are, here we are on the ground. We're going to go. No, we're not going to go. No, let's go. Okay, so we went, and now everybody has gone over, and now here are 30 characters incrementally moving through a landscape chronologically until success or failure. And those movies are awesome and have a lot of to be recommended about them, especially in their scope. But what Nolan has decided to do is, rather than tell a TikTok about Bolton or cut to the Churchill war rooms or the cave in Dover where he's making these decisions, or bring in all these other POVs, he's going to limit his POVs but expand the aperture of how time works in terms of his story. And I think it's just a really brilliant, inventive, and frankly, like a breath of fresh air in this particular genre. And I think that you can also make an argument that if you were experiencing something like this, which I never have and I hope I never do, that time would start to expand and contract anyway. So for the guys who are flying, even though they're up there for an hour, it feels like a week, you know? It feels like they can see the smoke in the distance. They can see the boats on their way. They can see everything that's coming and leaving that beachhead. But the guys who are on the beach, who have been there for what feels like they're stranded on a planet somewhere else, I can't imagine how long that took. But the time that it takes to run from the beach to the mole with the stretcher is just a minute. And the way that he plays the accordion with how these stories get told. And yeah, of course, to build momentum and to build up to these crescendos that have these explosive cathartic endpoints and then bring it back down. Like, it's much more about musical composition than it is about narrative act structure to me. And he's talked about that. He diagrammed this movie. I think he thought about this movie much more mathematically than poetically, but the visual aspect of the film is all poetry for me.
Something I was surprised to find in the screenplay, and I was so surprised to find it. I was wondering if it was a typo, but perhaps. But I think,
is that they're saying Harry Styles is Scottish?
Reading the day to night, sort of day to night, I think originally it was land and sea were both a week, and then he changed sea to a day. So like in the script, it says, sea 1 week. So thinking about the Moonstone out there for a week, in some version of this before he's like, no, we'll just do it in a day. And like, it could, depending on where you're departing from England, it could take, from the UK, it could take a number of days to cross over to Dunkirk. But like, I'm so, if that was originally the plan, I'm so happy that he changed it, because I think it matters that it's just like such three distinct experiences, not 1 week, 1 hour. I think that would be like just sort of harder. And then this is a nit to pick and it's dumb, but the beach doesn't feel like a week to me. No. It feels like 3 or 4 days to 3 days, maybe something like that, because you get a couple day to nights. But
there's only also like these casual references. I think Bolton's like, we've wasted an entire day.
Right.
And I'm like, but just one, right? Like there are some moments, I think for me, Joe, what you're talking about, it's the nitpick is, I find the moments where things are converging out on the water to be pretty confusing about what day it is, how long has Tommy been kind of like running around and eating jelly sandwiches, and versus like where Dawson is versus where the planes are. Like, that's where it starts to get a little jumbled, and then obviously unknotted when the tanker blows up.
Right.
I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No. I agree with that. And I think that like, I love what you said about the way in which time would feel unreal and subjective. And I think it matters. We talked about this a lot, of course, with the way that Prestige is arranged, Memento, of course, Interstellar, like this idea of like time and putting you in a surreal space, this idea of like, how does memory work in Memento? How do dreams work in Inception? Like, what is the sort of unreal space we can put something as real as the evacuation of Dunkirk, which of course literally actually happened, so like, but how can we disorient you even more than the action already disorients you? And then I think also there's the rising action of the unbearable tension of Jack Lowden drowning in a cockpit or something like that. And like in some cases there's respite. We'll cut back over to the Moonstone and, Peter's brewing a cup of tea or something like that. Like sometimes there's like an escape from that. And sometimes as we get closer and closer and closer to everything converging, it's like Jack Lowden's drowning and oh no, now the boys, the lads, the Highlanders are also drowning. You know what I mean? Like it just all sort of comes together. Mallory, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I think it's actually like the moments where sometimes real metrics and units of time are conveyed to us, it's almost disorienting. Like, for example, the conversation, the 3 hours or 6 hours for the tide, right? Which is there so that we understand as we head to the beach trawler, they're going to be in there for longer than they think. Like, it's an important aspect of mooring for us, but it is almost like, wait a minute. What? Well, that means if this is a week, how many times has the tide come and gone and in and out, and you start to do the math, and then that's, I think, not actually like a great way to watch the movie, to the point you both are saying. I think the other thing, like why the mole timeline, in addition to just the fact that it is so much longer, so we have to believe and feel that passage of time, it's like there are less clear countdowns there. For the sea, for the Moonstone, even though that vessel ends up being separate from the rest of the like surging, arriving fleet, we are heading toward the plumes of smoke, right? We are inching closer toward a goal that we can actually see changing. The fuel gauge is such an incredible way. You get it's ticking down from Collins, and then the Collins updates are gone because he's downed, and then the flicking of the reserve fuel. It's like we don't have to be tracking. Okay, what would each maneuver have been inside of the hour? Time is running out for Farrier. There's not as clear of an equivalent in the land timeline. All that said, one of the things that I really like about the triple timeline aspect of this is that I think, Joe, we've talked about this with, I think we talked about this in some capacity with both Inception and The Prestige. I think you can kind of calibrate the level of like sleuthing and tracking you want to do as you watch this to like your personal preference. So if you're paying really close attention and you're trying to understand where does it go, okay, that's a rewarding way to watch the movie, I think. If you're not doing that at all, there are going to be undeniable markers where like suddenly you see Cillian Murphy's shivering soldier on the little rescue rowboat at night and you're like, right, okay, we are just the passage of time in that storyline is moving radically differently than in the other one.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I just think that the other thing is like, there's something about the horror of the inevitability of the timelines merging. Like, to use the beach trawler as an example again, we're watching this desperate attempt. The bullets are piercing the hull. It's starting to fill. Can they plug it or not? The Dutchman has come on. Alex has revealed that Gibson is not who he thinks he is, right? All of this stuff is happening, and we're like, will they be okay? Will they make it? We already know that ship is going down. We've seen it. And we've seen the men swimming away from it as it recedes under the water. So I think that heightens this sense of like calamitous inevitability that you are carrying in your mind with the need to hope that things will be okay, which is, I think, a pretty cool balancing act.
Also, just for what it's worth, it's an ingenious solve for continuity because you cannot predict that weather. Right. You wouldn't be able to shoot successive days on those beaches and be like, okay, so like we need the light to look like this. Now you can fix stuff in post, and the VFX in this film are extraordinary because they're so seamless and invisible. But I think that what he did was, rather than worry about whether the sun is covered by a fog bank today or something like that, I'm just going to lean into the disorienting. There's several sequences where you're cutting between like 3 different weather systems.
Yeah.
It's sunny over the channel when the planes are approaching. It's a relatively clear day for the boat. It's absolute hell on earth on the beach, but it's 25 miles from dock to dock. How does that work? And I think it just puts you in this place where the weather and the light and the time are all expressions of the personal crisis that people are going through, rather than like, oh no, I don't. Yes, it's noon and then it's 12:15 and then the sun sets. You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of like, no, go with it. It would just you learn from Tenet. You just got to go with it.
It gives it gives you that legibility too. We talked about this a lot when we talked about Inception, and the way in which intentionally Inception is like, it's raining on this level, the light looks like this on this level, it's snowing on this level. So like anytime you cut back and forth between the levels, you know where you are because of not just because Mark Rylance is here, but because it's sunny and calm out here. And on the Tenet front, I am interested to revisit it.
Yeah.
But I will say I have yet to be able to get to the point where I can watch Tenet and just like relax, don't worry about it. It's like, it's just on the edge of like worrying my puzzle brain too much that I'm trying to figure out. And it's not like I need to solve Tenet. It's just, there's just something about it that like, unlike something like Dunkirk where I can let it sort of wash over me, this is like something where I'm just
I
like,
think
it's
Tenet also
agitating.
becomes especially tough when the story of the movie itself asks you to solve it, because that's when they're doing all the turnstile stuff and when they have the battle of time, basically. Well, you have to understand what the hell is going on to get like who's there and what their relationship to each other is.
Right.
But for the first 2/3 of the film, it's like a Bond movie told in an alien language, and anything is sort of possible, and this music is awesome, and the opera raid is rad, and the freehold thing. They crash a plane! Come on, guys, they crash a plane into the warehouse.
I mean, I saw Tenet 3 times at the drive-in during the pandemic, so I am with you on many aspects of it.
Can I say one more like broad thing about Dunkirk before we get into it? I'm trying to figure out like whether I can fit this into categories, but I just wanted to say, personal anecdote time. I just was over in England and I got to go to the Cliffs of Dover, which is not exactly where everybody takes off from. I think there's like Dorset and, a bunch of different places. But when I was there, I was walking out like along the cliffs, and you keep going out, and we had a clear day so we could see France. And our data plans changed to French while we were on this walk.
Oh, wow.
Just to say, it's fucking real how close they were.
Yeah, man.
And the most amazing, it's a storytelling thing in the film, but it's also about history, is that all these guys in France are like, I will do anything to get off this beach. And all the guys coming from England are like, we will do anything to help them because we have to stop Hitler from jumping the channel. It's over if that happens, or we're going to have to fight in the streets if that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of these two forces like kind of meeting in the middle because they have this almost biological imperative to survive, but in opposite directions, you can really, really feel it. There is just this strip of water dividing it. And obviously, like my dad was English. He was born in 1942. Like, it's kind of like beaten into me, the heroism of this era. But it is amazing to see just that, like, the landscape is not like, oh yeah, and all the way over there is California, but you just can't see it. It's like, no, it's right there.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
One thing I was thinking about, okay, so we have one more thing, which is a listener email before we get into our categories. But one other thing I want to note is that what I brought into this movie, like, a working knowledge of the little ships and that whole thing that happened based on all of the period English content that I like to consume. Chief among them, one of my favorite movies, Atonement, and just thinking about the fact that like James spoilers for Atonement, that James McAvoy's character dies waiting to get like airlifted, and like the Dunkirk sequence in Atonement is incredible.
I will never forget my wife throwing that book across the room and bursting into tears.
Ian McEwan has a lot to answer for, but just thinking about that, like, as a sort of failure of evacuation in relief to sort of the various success stories that we get to watch inside of this movie. Okay, on that sense of like your dad was English and the heroism of the time or something like that, we got this interesting email from our listener Nick about I don't think of Christopher Nolan as a political filmmaker necessarily, but this idea of moral clarity inside of something like Dunkirk, where we don't say Germans, we say the enemy, and like all that sort of stuff like that. Nick wrote about, he said, an underdiscussed aspect of Dunkirk is that it represents a pivot point in Christopher Nolan's filmography. Previously, all of his more political films, The Dark Knight trilogy and Interstellar, I don't think of Interstellar as political, but I guess so, were co-written with his brother Jonathan. Obviously, much has been written about the politics of those films, yet Christopher wrote his next three projects, Dunkirk, Tenet, and Oppenheimer, all by himself, and I'd argue we see a noticeable shift in their political outlook. Nolan's protagonists now battle Nazis, Russian oligarchs, and the American right wing. Obviously, it's impossible to ignore the fact that all three of these films also happen to be made after Donald Trump launched his presidential campaign in the summer of 2015. So my suggested topics would be, 1, how does Dunkirk fit into the larger #resistance filmography? And 2, do Chris, Mal, and Joe see such a difference in the politics of Nolan's 2005-2014 work and the politics of his films since Dunkirk 2017 to present? I don't think we need to get like bogged down in this, but I guess the top line question I wanted to ask you, Chris and Mal, is like, do you think of Christopher Nolan as a political filmmaker? Chris, what do you think?
Not until this email.
Right.
I mean, obviously, I think that he is concerned about what machinery does to humanity. You know, I think he's obviously like somebody who is enamored with the industrial kind of arm of the world, and like the way that we can build things and we can imagine things and we can envision things, and then those things can turn around and destroy us. I think that's present in the Batman trilogy. I think that's obviously present in Oppenheimer. And I think that Dunkirk for me is just about the heroism of survival. So it is a romantic movie, but I do not think it is romantic about war. I think it's romantic about pulling together, and it's romantic about sacrifice, and it's romantic about duty, and it's romantic about things like that. I had not thought about it in the context of the rise of Trump and where he's decided to take his filmmaking. I'll be very curious to see if Odysseus releases the Epstein files, you know? I hope he's not in them, frankly, you know?
I wouldn't be surprised. Odysseus got up to so much on his journey home.
God.
All right, Mallory, how about you? Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a fascinating email. I like the turn of phrase early in the email, like moral clarity. That feels right. And I think there's an interest in morality and the role that obligation and responsibility play in our lives, and also where power can lead you, like the responsibility that you can pair with power if you have it, if you have resources, if you have the ability to help other people, but also obviously the terrible places that advancement can lead individuals and the collective. And yeah, I think that he is interested certainly in what people do for each other and should do for each other. That feels very present in his works. And I think what's interesting about that is like pairing the impulse to study that and think about it with what is often, we have a great man recurring category for like a reason, right? Like stories that are very rooted in the singular achievements of incredibly accomplished or important individuals, like solitary figures who shaped the course of history, fictional or otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things I love about this movie too, and plenty of his other films, is like the ability to pair those desires, to examine both of those things. So, I
think he's very afraid that we're going to destroy ourselves, and I think he makes movies that like are very skeptical about like where the world has gone in different times in different ways, and sometimes he translates that through, dealing with like a pre-existing piece of IP, like the Dark Knight trilogy, and sometimes he's just like, we were tempted and we bit the apple. Look what happened here. We made a bomb.
I do think of his Batman movies as very, even though they come out into the Obama years, like Bush era movies. And I do, obviously Oppenheimer, like, it is a very political film, but I hadn't thought of him sort of broad strokes as a political creator. So I will be interested, maybe even chiefly Interstellar, looking at that upon rewatch. But I think it's interesting, that idea of like what we can achieve together, pulling it together. But like, I guess and we will get to our categories. But I was thinking a lot about The Last of Us when I was thinking about this, because we talked so much about who is the us and who is the them, and how it sort of like dials in and expands out. So like no French, only English only, evacuating, no French, get out of here. Or Highlanders only, like the factions inside of the factions, and how narrow your scope can become.
Yeah, these are British ships. You have your own ships.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I found myself writing us or them in my notes quite a bit, rewatching this movie and prepping for this pod, which
and that's also like a huge thing in England right now, is obviously like since Brexit and like a lot of the political turmoil that they're having right now is about British identity.
Yeah.
So
I'm interested to keep this in mind. We're watching Interstellar, as we plan to in the spring as well. Like, I guess without in real time being able to pause the podcast recording, go rewatch it right now and feel assured that the statement is correct. Like, I don't necessarily think these things have to be different. They're not mutually exclusive, and in fact are often inextricably entwined. But I think that it feels like as much or maybe more so societal than outright political to me in terms of maybe a focus or an interest. But again, those aren't always different, right? Because where do your countries or your militaries
do live in a society?
This episode is brought to you by Target. Listen up, explorers. Stranger Things has returned to Target, and the Upside Down is calling.
Don't miss your chance to grab some epic exclusives like an AirPods case shaped like a mixtape cassette, the totally tasty Doritos Stranger Pizza and Cool Ranch chips, and the Demogorgon Crunch cereal.
New items are dropping all season long, so prepare for one last adventure at Target. All right, so usually we do a sort of top 20 of these categories, but to spare Chris Ryan a 3-hour House of Our podcast, and also there are a couple categories that like wouldn't work because there are F-bombs in this movie, and I also decided to not do a funniest line category for Dunkirk. So we made
there
some
was
cuts.
a funny line there's one very funny line in this. That's why it's good that I'm Navy and you're Army then.
Exactly. That would be the one. I completely agree.
Yeah. That draws a chuckle.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to do 15. Let's start with, and they all, as we always do, we have a Nolan quote for each of them. So you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Who is the real villain of this movie? Chris Ryan.
I think it's the Channel.
Yeah, I was going to say water. Water is my answer.
Wow.
I decided after watching this I don't want to drown.
But you were undecided until you revisited this film.
There's just lots of ways I don't want to go, but dying, drowning in freezing water that is also just like foaming up into the beachhead.
Yeah. And
the water lights on fire. The water prevents them from getting home. The water, is where they crash their planes. It's an evil body of water. And obviously, I guess you could give a shout out to old Adolf, but I think drowning was in there.
good old Adolf. Yeah, I said water as well. I think watching Jack Lowden in that cockpit, trying and failing to break the glass, and then also like all of the Highlanders under the water on fire, all of that. Highlander 1, not my favorite character, but didn't want to watch him die in flames screaming.
Positively Blackwater, Battle of the Blackwater-esque there.
Sure.
I gotta say, the CR heads who have spent years citing The Sea is Dope as their favorite piece of writing are shook right now.
No, I didn't.
Shook.
This does not go against Sea is Dope doctrine.
Okay.
The sea is dope, but it is dangerous.
Okay.
You want to be
healthy
on
respect.
On it, not in it.
Maintain this. I have never said that I want to live a life aquatic. I love watching movies about it.
Look at your outfit today.
Wow.
This is stolen valor. I'm not saying
Steve's Zucor, honestly.
This is stolen valor. Yeah. I'm just saying I like watching movies about it. I do not want to be in Master and Commander. I don't want to saw my arm off. Spoilers for Master and Commander. And deal with all that stuff.
Okay. Fair distinction.
Mallory, Rubin, what's your answer?
We've talked about this, unsurprisingly, a good amount and just the big picture thoughts on the film. But my answer is like desperation and what it can do to shatter the thing that ultimately we are celebrating and championing and striving for. You know, when a sense of abandonment sets in and that hopelessness takes root, I think to Chris, you know, your earlier point about how for almost all of the characters we are glimpsing all sorts of impulses and instincts and actual choices and decisions. You know, you have so many characters and moments in the movie that celebrate the spirit of alliance, what you can achieve through unity. And then you have to see what happens when you break under the weight of the opposite of that. And
when your target practice for the Germans.
When your target practice. Yeah. And like, I think that, you know, so obviously just like the, you know, the buttresses of the film and so much of the really like a cornerstone of on which the movie rests is like the mythic nature of conviction, right? Determination to help your fellow man, to try to move forward, etc. So you have so many examples that fit in that bucket, like Farrier knowing that he is going to doom himself if he stays in the air longer, et cetera, on and on we could go. And then so when you have the moments where that impulse like falters and you glimpse what it looks like, it's just very powerful and harrowing. I really like, you know, like kind of bookend in terms of placement in the film. You have something like the beginning. We're about to see like that first kind of aerial attack on the mole, not the first one actually, but that we're witnessing in the film. And the soldiers just have to kind of lay flat. There's nowhere to go. What are they going to do, right? And there's that like, where's the bloody Air Force line? And then you bookend at the end. They're finally back. And that soldier passes by Collins and says like, where the hell were you, right? The sense of like, where were you? Even though we've seen where he was, where Farrier was, et cetera. And so all those moments where like that, Joe, to what you were saying a few minutes ago, where the us that is this beautiful, holy thing that we are celebrating inside of the us, it fractures. Like, Tommy first trying to join one of the queues on the beach, and it's like, it's Grenadiers, mate.
Grenadiers only.
You can't get out of this line, right? Or, you know, Benedict from Bridgerton turning away the French is like, you have your own ships, right? The, like, really, I think, harrowing conversation between members of command, like, you know, out in public, the line is arm in arm with the French. Well, what about in private? We need our army back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, obviously the stretch inside of the trawler where they just need to make weight. Can't wait to get Gibson out of there. Better him than me. We just get it like literalized from our guy Harry Styles from Alex there. So yeah, I think seeing how you can, through totally understandable reasons and circumstances, lose the ability to hold on to the thing that is the differentiator is that's my pick. But you know, choppy water also. Did seem bad. I would not have made it out of there.
Honorable mention for villain is Alex. Harry Styles is kind of a narc in this movie.
Harry Styles, but like I think it matters that it's Harry Styles.
I know.
Do you know what I mean? Like that even though Nolan's like, I didn't really know who he was when we cast him. Like it matters that he's like so charming, oozes charisma, so that when he does this terrible thing, you're not then like really, really mad that he's on the train at the end. I'm a little mad, but I'm not like, you know, get him out of there.
I love that anecdote that he's like, yeah, you know, just great old timey face, right? That's and it's Chris. It's like to me the opposite of the scouts when Darnold went to the Jets, who were like bad face.
Yeah, that's right.
This is like feels like
I do love that Alex moment, horrible moment, when he turns on someone who has saved his life like no fewer than 3 times. Is when he says he's German spy, he's a Jerry, right? And then he's like, oh, he's a frog. Like this is dehumanizing, right? Like he's not a human. Right. He's a Jerry, he's a frog. He's like, you know, whatever. Okay. Are you watching closely? Most exquisitely gorgeous shot, Chris Ryan?
Okay, how do we not do Farrier for every one of these categories? It's
you
Farrier's plane running over gas over Dunkirk.
It is obviously Farrier's plane running out of gas over Dunkirk.
Gorgeous.
Honorable mention to me to the first moment when Tommy is like running through the streets and then you first see the beach, which is sort of like blazing light and you see it through the sides of the building and then like you open out into the beach. That's
there's also when the first beach sequence is over and at the 2 poles that are kind of standing and like the camera coming through. I mean, so in their bag in this movie. It's like to just freeze any frame, and it's better than most filmmakers' entire life.
I have a different pick. It's also a Farrier pick, but it's a different one than though I have no qualms at all with the drifting over the beach at the end stretch, which is astonishing. And the sound design in that stretch is unbelievable. But like 35 minutes into the movie, this is one of the really like breathtaking IMAX shots when, Fortis Leader is down, right? Just to because people listening are like, I don't remember what 35 minutes into the movie is. So some context. Farrier's kind of taken over command, right? He's guided Collins to do the like bank left maneuver. He's realized his gauge is broken. He's ordered the climb to 2,000 feet. He's done the incredible Bane-like mumble of "we can dive down on the bastards from above over," and you can't understand a word that he's saying unless you have subtitles on. It's just we're all in on Farrier at this point, right? They're down to 40 gallons, and Collins spots the bomber and the two fighters who are targeting the minesweeper, and then the planes turn and the shot rotates, and so we go from sea and sky as horizontal halves to vertical. Like, it's just gorgeous and breathtaking to have the sea on the left and the sky on the right. And I think also to like, Chris, what you were saying earlier about the weather and the light and kind of the cheat of the continuity, there's something about that shot. And we get other similar shots throughout, but like this one is the most kind of like, oh my God. The water looks almost like tropical, like it's so turquoise there. And it's, I think, a really effective way, even though they are so close, of really making them feel worlds apart from the people they're trying to help, just visually. So I fucking love that. I think that's amazing. I also, one of my runners up, I don't know why this hits me so hard, but when Tommy and Gibson are running with the stretcher to try to get on the rescue vessel in the first place, that like the sea foam, the collection of the sea foam there is,
it's all scummy.
Yeah, it's like God tier to me. This incursion of the natural is just undeniable there.
I think it's also just like it underlines, you know, as Chris said, there's a lot of great VFX in this movie, but like Chris Nolan's insistence on reality and just like the scummy sea foam of Dunkirk is I always pause on that. Also, I would say and this was like in every single trailer. Actually, is it the poster? Like all of the helmeted heads sort of like ducking down together during the pass. So
or just also it's in the trailer and it's the single shot of the guy walking into the water.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That I have for a different category.
Me as well.
Yeah.
Me as well. I like too the shot of the Highlanders marching toward the beach trawler. Yeah. Because you just get a sense of like the vastness of the space and how small they all are.
In the screenplay, it says it's 7 miles. They're 7 miles away from the mole in the trawler, which, you know, and that's why, like, you know,
on the perimeter.
Their target practice. Okay. Speaking of someone just walking into the ocean.
This is my pick here too.
I can't remember to forget you the scene you think about the most. To me, it would be someone just walking into the ocean and the three lads watching him do it. So yeah,
I'm gonna go with like that, but like I'm gonna make it part of a duology with the thing that comes right next to it, which is so you have the Tommy Gibson Alex moment where they watch this soldier just walk into the sea. Mm-hmm. Incredibly affecting and disturbing. But then you have it right next to the conversations about the engineers building the makeshift pier. And how do you know where the tide is? Well, the bodies start coming back and they have to like just kind of brush the bodies away. And like what that does for the clockwork aspect, but also just like thinking about all aspects of what it would mean to be there and feel like you couldn't get out. And the reminders of how hopeless it can feel are just washing in at your feet. Like the inescapability of that despair. So those scenes are right next to each other. And that's my, it gets in the old head and it doesn't really leave. Yeah. It's tough. What's your pick here, Chris?
I would probably say the stretcher run.
Yeah.
Just because that encapsulates the idea of heroism being born out of a con, basically. These two guys pretending to be stretcher bearers. But then also is like, what's a stretcher bearer? Isn't it just somebody who picks up a stretcher? You know, do you have to be certified by the Red Cross to do that? And I especially loved the run across the plank this time around.
Yeah.
Because English people are always looking for something to cheer for.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sure it was almost just like guys were taking bets, like, but I love, give a run at it, you know? And
go for it. Yeah.
the other thing that I talked about this at length on Rewatchable, so I didn't want to get too, far into it. But the other runner-up scene I think about the most is Farrier standing in front of his burning plane and getting arrested by the Germans because Christopher Nolan, It's Not Too Late, Tom Hardy,
yes,
POW movie, please do it. Please.
Oh my God.
Dunkirk
Farrier
2.
in The Great Escape. Come on.
Dunkirk 2, The
Holy
Search for
shit.
Farrier. I would watch it so quickly.
Oh, God.
You isolating the Stretcher run, I think, is also a really good place to talk about the fact that, like, you watch them, even though it's a con, all that effort to get that body on that ship, only for that ship to sink and that,
and
guy
also
to
for
die.
that guy to be like, "What are you doing? Like resting? Get the fuck
Yeah,
off the
get
boat."
the fuck off the ship.
Yeah.
But all the times that they get on a ship, only for that ship to, like, sink, I think is all that effort, and then back to, and it's like in Jurassic Park, we're back in the car, we're back on the beach. All right, no one cared who I was until I put on the mask. Best use of a Nolan verse regular, Chris?
Sorry.
Barrier time?
I'm with you.
You know
That's
what?
actually
Hey,
not my answer, but
here's what I'm going
okay.
to say. Yes, Farrier. I will say, Branagh has a very difficult role in this movie. He's essentially like the only person giving exposition.
Mhm.
He has got to express the filmmakers' ideas about what was going on here thematically, about like, you can almost see it,
Yeah.
And he's fucking Kenneth Branagh. So he can get wet-eyed and stare at the sky and look through binoculars. And he does a really good job of it. And since I've basically spent my entire last 10 years talking about Tom Hardy in this movie, I'll shout out Kenneth Branagh.
And I'm glad to welcome Branagh into the fold because we've been doing this category for 3 films, and this is Branagh's entrance into the Nolan verse, and he's been in 3 films, so he counts as a regular. But it's nice to mix it up from Hardy and Murphy and Kane, etc. That being said, Mallory, Rubin.
I'm going with Tom Hardy as well here.
Yeah.
I still think Eames in Inception is my favorite Hardy in the Nolan filmography, and I say that as the world's biggest Bane enthusiast. But those are the top 3. I mean, I love him in this movie, and I think an incredible amount of the success of the movie hinges on, like we were talking about earlier, what he can do with the dart of an eye or the scribble of a piece of chalk or a heavy breath or the absence of any sound entirely. And I love, there's something about Hardy has this incredible, really Hardy-esque ability to pair the reckless with the methodical in a way that you really need with Farrier for what he does. And so I just I love it. I think there's a great case to make for Cillian Murphy here, which I assume you're about to do, Joe.
You would think. I always do, but not today. Even though I think he's great in this. And I actually think it matters that even, when you have, some actors we might be less familiar with, like Fionn Whitehead is I think it matters that Cillian Murphy is a face we recognize, so that when we get that moment that you mentioned, Mallory, where we see him in greater control of his faculties earlier, we can easily say oh, that's Cillian Murphy, et cetera, et cetera. My answer is actually, oddly enough, Michael Caine, because
Fortis won.
Fortis leader.
Yeah.
So you talked about, what it's like for Farrier to, we lose Fortis leader, then we lose Collins, and he's up there all alone. But the moment before when Fortis leader goes down, the fact that it's Michael Caine's voice, and we just hear it, and there's something so comforting about Michael Caine is here. We don't see him because he's too old to be an RAF pilot, but Michael Caine is here, and there's a sense of authority and comfort. And it's Alfred from the Batman films is here. Michael Caine is here to make sure everything's going to be okay, and then he's gone. And that voice is gone. And I just think that that's a really effective use of him. He could have been, an officer on the ground, but I think, I don't know if he just did not want to do that, or if they were this is actually more effective. But I thought that was really good.
I think that's a great point about just giving us a little drip of what has become such a source of comfort for us, only to rip it away. I want to present you guys with a headline I discovered on the internet in prepping for this podcast and see what you think about it. Was Googling Kenneth Branagh and Christopher Nolan, they've now collaborated on many films in recent years. The first Google search result that comes up is this. It's a Reddit headline. Kenneth Branagh is Nolan's new Michael Caine. Discuss. What do you think?
Absolutely not. Have you heard his accent in Tenet?
No, I couldn't hear anything in Tenet.
Do you know what I admire about a tiger?
I am Roman Abramovich. Yeah.
No, but nice try. Absolutely.
A lot of engagement with that post, really high up in the results. Fascinating.
Sure.
A lot of Reddit karma. Yeah.
All right. Speaking of Michael Caine, why do we follow Serge so we can learn to pick ourselves up? Best stunt, Christopher Ryan?
So I interpreted this slightly rather than, bane-breaking Batman's back kind of stunt. It's more of a set piece, but I watched it 3 times this week and still can't figure out how he did the oil lighting on fire and all the guys. I just don't know. I can't say for sure that that's fake fire.
I mean, it's Christopher Nolan. It's probably not. He's like, I'm going to build a bomb to make Oppenheimer.
So whatever
let me
it
light
was,
the channel on fire.
It was pretty convincing when those guys lose their breath underwater and have to come up in fire and die. Probably the worst death you could possibly imagine.
That's the thing, because you were saying earlier, drowning. Now it's tops of your ways I don't want to go list, but I think it's still it's neck and neck with burning alive.
Would you rather
combine the two?
Would you rather die? You think you're drowning and you come up and it's on fire, or you think you're drowning and you come up and the lake is frozen above you?
It's ice. Oh, ice is worse to me.
That's horrible.
I'd rather burn, honestly. I don't know why. Maybe because I've seen way too many movies where someone's trapped under ice versus it's only the guy who says "Tell that to Kanja Club" from Star Wars: The Force Awakens who gets really roasted and toasted here. So
I think the fact that they're they've had to go through this oil slick, they're coated. Once the fire hits, it's there's no.
It's almost sweet relief. Yeah.
There's that really awful their shrieks and their screams as we pan further back. But the shot that I love in that stretch is when we're under and they can see the fire there.
He
so
knows
it's
if he goes up. That's it. Yeah,
that's a great.
It's a surprisingly ungory movie. It is not a lot. There's not a lot of blood. There's no guy holding his stomach, a la Saving Private Ryan. It's really more to the imagination, but I also think it's the key reason why this movie, you can rewatch it. It's I can't rewatch Saving Private Ryan as much as or the first 40 minutes of it at least, as much as I do Dunkirk.
Yeah. Mallory, Rubin, what's your answer here?
So just a bounty of sinking ship set pieces to pick from, and I will be going with the torpedo hitting the vessel at night, because I think that's a visually really interesting sequence, but it's also a part of the movie where story beats are happening that are really interesting to me. Gibson has not gone down into the mess because, as Tommy will try to explain to Alex, it's he wants he wants a quicker escape, but he doesn't want to have to speak down there, right? So we're bringing all of this heightened tension. The soldiers down there feel okay, I had a bite, I had some tea. We hear the engine go on and they're cheering. There's this brief
Chris's
moment.
Point.
Yeah,
any
he can cheer for anything. And then boom, and the way that the water rushes in and the scene goes dark, and then Gibson, who's I don't know all of my seafaring terminology, I'm not CR, but holding onto the rope bubble, and then he knows they're down there and he doesn't have to do this, but he makes the decision to crawl and climb up to open the hatch, and then we see from their view the little speck of light to shoot out, and then you pair that with when he drowns in the trolley, he doesn't get out, and Alex is let's go, but it's he doesn't turn around and grab his hand to make sure he pulls him out. So as kind of paired sequences, I think that's really fascinating and upsetting. But I just the sinking ships are not, I don't want to be hyperbolic here. Nothing rises to the level of hallway fights in Inception, but there is interesting stuff happening with the camera spinning and, how they're conveying the way that the water would flip to suddenly be on top of you and stuff like that. So, Yeah, the torpedo hitting at night is my pick.
That scene, R.I.P. to one of 3 women in this movie.
It's tough.
Absolutely.
How much more time could we have had with that nurse?
Who's played by a Nolan cousin, actually.
Oh.
Miranda Nolan, I believe. Okay, so because usually we have another category that's like best set piece. So I like that you guys have sort of like blended those two together because it isn't a very like I can think of this particular stunt. But for me on my second rewatch, thinking about that idea of 6 Tommies and this one made it over the wall, when that first strafing of the beach, when you see a bomb go off and off and off, and there's like the one guy who's right next to Tommy who's been shooting at the sky and he gets blown all the way up in the air. Like that guy didn't survive that. And the VFX supervisors have talked about how that was the hardest shot for them to do because removing the wire work on that guy was really, really hard. So they again, that's like a guy they sent flying up through the air. You can tell it's not a digital double. And it just it underlines, there's all this luck or camaraderie or all these other things that cunning and camaraderie, but there's also luck that has to do. Like Tommy's just a few feet away from just being his story's done at the beginning of the film. So, I really like that moment.
Great pick.
Amateurs seek the sun, get eaten, power stays in the shadows. Stealth MVP of this movie that not enough people talk about. Chris?
Rather than people, I'll just say I don't talk enough about it.
Okay.
Rylance. Perhaps the soul of the movie.
Yeah.
And, obviously is a big name and I have some other nominees here. But this time around, I found his performance to be so lovely and beautiful. And, even his moments of frustration are still buttoned up. He still has his sweater vest on. And I forgot about the move. I forgot that he learned the move from his son. Yeah,
that kills me. That part.
And then when Murphy or whoever Collins asks Peter, it's just oh, were you in the Air Force? And he's just like, no, not me.
Yeah, my brother. Third week of the war.
My brother flew hurricanes. Yeah.
When you think about that, when Dawson is telling his son Peter, to try to help Collins, and he's like, I didn't see a parachute. He's got to be dead. He's like, he could be alive. That's sort of the most, the harshest he gets. And it's because he's thinking about his own son. Could someone have saved his own son?
Beautiful act of heroism. He's like, we have to help.
Yeah.
That's a great pick.
Mallory, what's your answer?
We've already talked about mine, but it is definitely Emma Thomas selling her producing partner and husband. You need a script for this movie. Come on, man. Can you guys imagine?
Did he just want the dialogue improvised, or was he we're just going to go out there and just let it rip?
I think the dialogue,
but
right?
Every aspect, this is genuinely a movie that is akin to the inner workings of a clock. And so one piece is off or one prong on the puzzle isn't there, and it's you can't complete the puzzle. So it's actually, I think often these alternate histories about how a movie came together are really fascinating to think about. This is a terrifying one to me to contemplate, and I'm really glad it didn't happen. So thank you, Emma. Thank you.
This might sound silly, but my heart is my heart. I'm gonna give it to the knitwear. We George's sweater vest.
Great fucking pick. Yes.
Tonglen Carney's iconic sweater.
Oh my
God. Just again, you've got all the infantrymen in their same uniforms. You've got the RAF pilots. We'll talk. I have another place to talk about Jack Loudon and his RAF uniform and stuff like that. But then you just got the lads from home in their, George's sweater vest most of all, even though Tom Carney's red sweater is, I think, the
iconic
vision of this movie. But George, when Barry Keoghan just starts running up in his sweater vest, and there's just something so immediately you understand who George is, even before he's I never was anyone. Maybe I'll be in the local paper. I feel that's all in the sweater vest.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
An incredible pick. While you're on Fit Watch, is there anything you'd like to say about Accent Corner? Or will you be returning to that in other categories?
Oh,
this would be the anti-MVP, I guess. But any accent takes you want to get off?
No, I mean everyone's accent. I love a regional accent. I think everyone,
Rylance nails it.
Rylance is incredible. I think all of that is wonderful. we alluded to this a couple times, but I did text you guys last night, like frantically trying to understand why Harry Styles was in the Scottish Highlanders unit. But Chris did like a very light Google that I guess I was incapable of doing to find out that like someone with a Midlands accent, which is Harry Styles' accent, could have been in the Scottish
They threw
Highlander.
open the doors for the Highlanders.
Generous of them.
The missions standards dropped, you know?
All comers, including Harry Styles. Okay.
This is going to be a short category.
You're waiting on a train that will take you far away. This is usually our best dead wife moment.
Yeah.
But I've changed it to
Do you guys have a favorite dead wife in this whole filmography?
Oh, it's tough to top Inception.
We've learned some very special things. Like the fact that in The Prestige, every dead wife that's in The Prestige was added by Christopher Nolan. It's not in the original book. All of the dead wives were additive by Nolan.
Emma Thomas won the one fight. She got a script for Dunkirk.
I also forgot that Liam Neeson has randomly as a dead wife in Batman Begins, just like kind of randomly. It's just in there. So once you start looking for it, it's really fun. Anyway, the answer, the change to the category is: was there a spot to put a single solitary woman with more than one line in this movie? Do we think?
I think that the lady with the boat from Dartmouth, who's like, "We're from Dartmouth,"
okay,
could have said like one more like. And it's quite rainy over there right now, so it's lovely to be.
Oh, man. That's a good one. I'm going to go with Mrs. Dawson. So there is a moment at the end of the movie when Peter and his father, Mr. Dawson, are looking at Sweet George's clipping in the paper. Because he has perished. Mm-hmm. And when Peter moves from the kitchen, I believe, into the foyer, there is a woman standing in that room.
Yep.
Who I assume is his mother and Mr. Dawson's wife.
In the script, it says, Mrs. Dawson does not turn around.
Well, there you go. So I would posit to you,
she's
could
in limbo.
Turn around.
Yeah.
It's been 50 years.
She doesn't have a face, honestly. Yeah.
What if she... Now, I think it would rob the movie of a little of what Chris just beautifully articulated in the Rylance MVP case of like this reveal about his dead son that then enriches some of those prior moments. But could his wife and Peter's mom have like been there as they're pushing out to sea to beat the return of the naval officers to requisition the ship? Could she have said, "I've already lost one boy, I can't bear to lose another"? I think that could have happened. And then at the end, she could have turned in the kitchen and said, "Peter, what a beautiful soul you are. You got George in the paper." That would have been 2 lines.
Wow.
Yeah. Now run down to the chippy and get it.
The chippy.
I'll take 1 cod, 1 chips, chicken filet burger. Bring it back.
Is that your order?
I've been watching. I watched Dairy
delicious.
Girls on the flight. I rewatched Dairy Girls, and there was a really good.
Where are you?
Order.
Yeah, I mean, where are you on mushy peas?
Not bad.
Okay.
Not bad. Yeah.
Agreed.
I have 2 options. One is make blind man, blind woman.
Sure.
That's like an actual character who has meaning in the and then also maybe man with a bottle of beers into the train
could have been a lady.
Woman with bottles
newspaper
of beer.
boy could have been newspaper girl. And she could have said, "Haven't you heard?"
I think a comely lass with some frosty beers would have turned Alex's spirits around even faster. They're going to spit on us in the street. Wait, here's a hot babe with some beers for me.
Right.
I think he would have been thrilled.
It's almost like I'm in One Direction. This is weird.
Okay, they won't fear it until they understand it, and they won't understand it until they've used it. Clearest great man moment. This has been a really fun thing for us to track, sort of inspired by Oppenheimer, but sort of seeding it back. There's some great Thomas Wayne stuff we talked about, et cetera, et cetera. Chris, how did you interpret this category?
I did Branagh staying for the French.
Yeah.
And really kind of honestly like milking it. Like letting the guys get halfway down the ladder.
Darcy's like, "I'm out."
And
he's like, I'm leaving.
He's like, "Have fun in England."
Yeah.
I'm staying for the French.
Very good. Very good. Mallory.
This is actually my pick too, in part because I just thought we would have talked about Farrier's sacrifice so much by this point. And in fact, we have. But that could certainly be the pick. But yeah, Bolton staying behind. And the very intense way that he delivers that is my pick as well. I think also just the movie ending on the reading of Churchill's address should be eligible.
This is my answer. So like we have Tommy reading one of the most famous speeches that was ever given. And you can hear, if you're me, you can hear Churchill's voice saying, we shall fight them on the beaches, we shall fight them on the landing grounds, et cetera, et cetera. So
when you hear that, do you hear Lithgow or Gary Oldman?
I was going to say I hear Lithgow, yeah. I made an episode of The Crown, always.
Very jowl forward, whatever it is. But the absence of Churchill here, even in his absence, I think is like something, because Nolan has talked about how he considered like putting Churchill in here somehow and then decided not to. So I think including him anyway, having Tommy read it, Alex not pay attention to one of the best speeches of all time being read to him, but Churchill being here even when he's not here, I thought was my answer. Okay.
That would have been great if Alex is just like, that's a bit shit.
He's like, what? What were you saying? It's so good. Okay. It's not who I am underneath phrasing, but what I do that defines me. Nolan is not known for his sexual content, but let's go ahead and try to excavate the horniest moment of this war film where many people die. I have but one clear answer. Chris, what's your answer?
All the Highlanders on the trawler.
Okay.
Let's make a memory, guys.
What did they do for the last 6 hours waiting for the tide to come in?
Who cares when the tide comes in?
Yeah, great one.
My pick is Harry Styles Alex very lustily eating a piece of jellied toast. Yeah. I say, I see your watermelon sugar and I raise you a strawberry jam sugar. That is my pick.
For me, it is when, in his red sweater, Tom Glencarney breaks open the top of the cockpit and Jack Lowden, cool as a cucumber, says, afternoon.
You guys are the best.
Those two Aryan poster children, I feel like I see a future for them. Okay. An idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious, the line that hits hardest 15 years later. Mallory, what do you have for this?
Can I give you guys some like rapid fire contenders? I don't have necessarily one pick. I have like
Let me just do mine just so you don't take it. It's I'm on him. It's it's the hardest shit anyone has ever said. Isn't Jack Lowden's like, he's on me. He's like, I'm on him.
Should that have been horniest moment?
It's the horniest for me.
Yeah, we know. We know. Joe, what's your pick? And then I'll hit you guys with my contenders and you can help me decide.
No. Go for yours. I don't have like a great answer for this.
Honestly. Okay, here are some contenders. When Bolton is like, we got to start thinking about how many wounded we can take. One stretcher takes the space of 7 standing men. That one really bowls me over. It's like that hideous calculus of war boiled down into one line.
He has to cut the medical ship loose. Yeah.
Yeah. The everything that we've already talked about with just like you can practically see it from here. What home? Like, we know why those lines are there, but they really work. We get a few versions of that. But maybe this is a good spot to talk about a little bit more about the Cillian Murphy character, the shivering soldier, and his interactions on the Moonstone with Mr. Dawson and Peter and Dear Sweet George. We'll probably all be coming back to George shortly in another category, I assume. Maybe not. I will be. Huh. But we have a job to do. This is a pleasure yacht. Your weekend sailors, not the bloody Navy. And then that builds in short order to, you should be at home. Well, there won't be any home if we allow a slaughter across the channel. And then Mr. Dawson says, it's not just us. A call went out. We aren't the only ones to answer, I just think that's a good way to like distill into a single conversation the idea of the heroism and the sacrifice of common men. And like we've talked about Mr. Dawson, and like he has this like he's driven by personal loss and grief. He has personal reasons, but also there's this sense of duty and the love of country. Any and all of those like that a person could bring, I think, are conveyed nicely in that line. But this is maybe a weird nomination, but this really gets me every time is when Peter tells George, be brave, lad. And he's not like, hey, my mate, my lad. He's like saying it because he's like, George is so young, lad. And I'm like, you guys are like peers, but George is like, he's 17, right? As we see in the newspaper clipping. So that just makes Peter feel so old and like war weary already at such a young age to look at George and say, lad, it really kills me. And then I think the last nominee I have is again, Bolton, the battle is here. What the hell are they saving them for? When Winton asks that, and he says, the next battle, the one for Britain. Like the dialogue is so sparse, but the lines that are here tell us what we need to know quite effectively. So
on the like Peter George interaction front, this is like one section that was cut from very few was cut from the script that I read, but there's a moment when we first understand like, I can't see like that interaction between Peter and George. There's a section where Peter's kind of like making fun of George, like I think trying to sort of keep things normal. And George is like, don't laugh at me, like, blah, blah, blah. And like, they cut that. I was like, I think it's good that you cut this, like, ribbing between these two guys as he's bleeding out onto the life vest. Another thing I learned from the script, they say something about, like, I think Collins, and they say his Mae West, which is RAF rhyming slang for life vest, which I figured out from this script. But I was like, I love that he put RAF slang into the stage directions of his screenplay. I will give this to also Dawson and the Shivering Soldier interaction when he says, men my age dictate this war. Why should we be allowed to send our children to fight it? Think about
That's
that
also
a lot.
cool when Tom Hardy's like, I'm on him.
Yeah. It's sick. It's hella sick.
That was honestly like,
yeah.
I've had some ups and downs with celebrity guests, and when Quentin Tarantino was like, and then he's like, I'm on him, and I was like, you and I are brothers.
Okay. You think darkness is your ally, but you merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. Most devastating moment. I'm gonna clear you guys, if Mallory, to talk about George if you want to. I'm gonna give it to when Gibson is on outside and he can hear the men in the dark saying like, come back, don't leave us, come back, come back. Very like Rose and Titanic, come back. Like that's just like absolutely gut wrenching. So yeah.
Yeah.
I just referenced it, but I actually, for me, it was Bolton watching everybody leaping off of the medical ship once it's been hit.
And he's like, push it out. Cut the line.
And he's like, we have to cut the lines, like, because he's basically can't sacrifice the mole and he can't have like a huge fire there. But like, you get enough in the shots of the stretcher run and just like Bolton getting the ship ready. You get enough shots that you see like a nurse there. You can see like faces of people, and then like they're gone, and or have to leap into the cold channel.
Yeah.
And just watching him be like, this is like what it feels like to see a decision go wrong in real time is just really heartbreaking.
Yeah, and everyone's on that stretcher for a reason. So the people on the stretcher certainly were not able to jump ship.
Right.
Mallory, want to talk to us about our guy George?
George, sweet George, dear George. It's just so sad. And I think obviously what happens to George, the injury, his death, is sad, but all of the aspects of how that unfolds, I think, like really heighten the devastation. You have that like, where we're heading to France into war, George kind of set up for it, which was really good, obviously. But the fact that like for the characters on the Moonstone, but then for us as viewers, there's like a little bit of a delay in realizing, because he's got like the Shivering Soldier, the tussle, is trying to take control of the vessel and like elbow to the head. And we kind of see him fall out of the shot, but it's a beat before we realize that he has hit his head on this like metal prong, right? He's bleeding out. The very tender way that Peter cares for him, building toward the I can't see moment. But then when they're rescuing all of the oil-slicked soldiers and they're all pouring down into the cabin, and Peter's shouting like, careful, careful down there. And then it's Alex. He's just like, he's dead, mate. Like,
then be careful.
And then
with
the way
him.
that Peter says, so be bloody careful with him. That's the part that really gets me. And like, just kind of, it's so sad. And then I love that Peter, who was like so angry with the Shivering Soldier, it's like, no, he's not going to be okay. When George is actually gone, when he's dead, and the soldier asks him again, like how George is doing, that he doesn't lash out at him and say, you killed this boy who was just trying to help, because it's like, it wouldn't be right to put that extra burden on him when he's already carrying so much. And that little look that his father gives him, that little nod of approval, like that was the right decision to make. And then you thought you couldn't be devastated enough. They're home and they're carrying George's body out, covered in a sheet. And we see Cillian Murphy look back and see it. And like, he knows. It's just very fucking sad. All of it.
Yeah. And then Mrs. Dawson just like doesn't even turn around, man.
No, just like, is he in the paper? Local boy, George Mills, just 17, hero at Dunkirk.
Did you go to the chippy or what?
Can you hear the music, Robert? Most unforgettable sound design score moment, Christopher Ryan.
Hans, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
The clock ticking, which is the first thing I ever heard in association with Dunkirk, because we haven't mentioned the iconic teaser trailer. We Surround You, pamphlets falling from the sky.
So good.
And the tick, 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 tick. Yes. Because it ties into the storytelling device that Nolan uses, is the idea of like winding a clock, basically letting it go, this stopwatch of this battle. I just thought that, and the way that it informs the entire sort of score, it's a little bit of a cheat, but I'll go with clock ticking.
That's not a cheat at all. And this might be apocryphal, but I read that was his pocket watch that he like recorded and gave to Hans.
I'm gonna go with that. That's
damn.
So
sick.
That is sick.
And I'm on him. All right, Mallory, what's your answer?
So I'm with Chris. I'll pick a specific stretch of the where you feel the score functioning as a countdown inside of it, which is when Tommy, a stretch we've talked about a lot already, when Tommy and Gibson have picked up the stretcher and are racing to try to get onto the ship in time. The way that the score there is like a timer, but like a pulse, and it's kind of like punctuating each step they take. And it's like a little bouncy, but like really, really urgent. And you also have it as the score functioning as clock with the Dawsons trying to push off in time. But man, there's like something really frenetic about the scoring in that stretch in particular that I really love.
My answer is this is the movie where I learned what a shepherd's tone is, which is that aural AURAL illusion of the rising tone that never resets, and that's what's like a lot of this score is just this sort of like you fade in the bass note and fade out the high note, so it's like never resolves, and it just constantly feels like it's going up. And Hans,
which is how the script is structured anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And Nolan says like that, the shepherd's tone. But I like distinctly remember watching a YouTube video about it and like, what is this thing in the Dunkirk score that I don't understand how it is accomplished? He said that was like the core. To your point early on, Chris, about this is musical. Like that was the core of this, and it just becomes unbearable. The tension of that,
because the tension of different storylines is meeting in these various other points of other storylines. So it's like the end of the plane is, it's great.
So good. All right, we're almost done here. For me, I think this is the end of a beautiful friendship. Actor who never returned to the Nolanverse, but should have.
This is easy for me. It's not too late to get Jack Lowden in another Christopher Nolan movie soon.
Where would you put him in the Odyssey?
I think that it's okay that he hasn't been in another one yet, but he needs to be in another one soon. Like, has to be. I mean, could he have been in Oppenheimer? Maybe. He could definitely be in the Odyssey.
Could definitely be in Tenet.
Could for sure be in Tenet.
Mine was going to be Tom Glencarney. And I think that Collins and Peter could lead the search for Ferrier.
Collins and Peter boyfriends?
Collins and Peter wearing sweaters in the Alps, looking for the prison camp, off the Swiss border, riding motorcycles.
I'm there on night one.
I'm giving it to Rylance.
And
I
could have been in Oppenheimer.
We were in a real Rylance era for a while. And he was making some poor choices. Ready Player One comes to mind. Like there's some just like baffling Rylance choices, and he got his Oscar and all this sort of stuff like that. But I was like, where has Rylance been? He's in Bones and All, like, which I love him in that. But like, so I looked up what he has coming up. Did you guys know that he's in an upcoming Terrence Malick film, The Way of the Wind, playing Satan?
It's never coming out.
I know, but when it does,
wow,
it's like 30 hours long.
I put upcoming in like the deepest of air quotes. But yeah, Mark Rylance playing Satan for Terrence Malick, or he might get cut out of it entirely, as many actors have in the Malick oeuvre. But that's exciting to me. But anyway, put Rylance in the Odyssey. Are you kidding me?
Oh my God.
Okay. The most Nolan thing about this movie, men just want to watch the world burn. Mallory Rubin.
Just my pick is something we've talked about a ton. Just the timelines. I think that's the easy pick for me here. Just the way that the structure of the film reinforces the idea of how these experiences are entwined, even though they take place in different locations or over different time spans and different contexts. I think that feels simultaneously like the only way Nolan would make this movie and like a movie only Nolan could make it this way.
Chris?
I think it's his home field advantage. I think the reason this movie feels personal is because I feel like he has been to that strip of water before. I think he's been on those beaches. I think, or at least he has been on beaches like them. And I think, you know, there's times in his career where he has applied his eye to something like Gotham or the New Mexico desert or what have you. And it's like he's seeing that in a specific way. This almost felt like he was replicating a memory of a place or a place of experience. And so I felt like I was watching a movie made by someone who had been to this place before and thought about this place for a long time.
I love that. I'm going to give it to the sort of like the heroic thing you do when no one's really watching. Like Collins is watching Farrier, right? He's like, come on, Farrier, like all this sort of stuff like that. But like Farrier's alone in that cockpit when he makes that decision to turn back around. Yeah. You know what
and
I
Collins
mean?
is
And
like, come on, guy, you can go back. And he's like,
you can go back. Like, you know, like you can go back, and he decides to stay. And so it's that like, it comes, I think of it mostly in his sort of Batman, but in Interstellar, there's just like these moments, these decisions that people make, and the acts of heroism that happen when no one's watching or no one will give you accolades for necessarily, but you do it and it matters that you did it. So.
Can I ask the two of you a question?
Please.
Is there any like how long do you think it would take you to calculate how much fuel you had left based on how much fuel someone else has left, based on how long you've been in the air?
I only have one rule.
Am I an RAF pilot?
No math. It's
no,
my
you're
only
a podcaster.
Rule. Yeah, my only rule is no math. So I'm done. I don't make it
watching
to the
him
point
do
where
like
I can drift.
chalkboard long division. I was like, dude, I'm dead. I'm so dead.
I should have said in Accent Corner, by the way, Tom Hardy's like super plummy RAF like upper crust accent is really fun and funny to me. I think it's really good. All right, last but not least, we've been doing this the whole time. You would think it's just for Chris, but actually this has been our singular mission, which is our greatest accomplishments cannot be behind us. What aspect of Nolan's upcoming The Odyssey are you thinking about / most hyped for this month? I am starting the counter. It is 241 days until The Odyssey.
Oh my God.
So as Chris mentioned, we got an Empire cover story about The Odyssey. We've been sort of tracking like bits of information is coming out. So Chris, what are you most hyped for this week as you think about The Odyssey?
Mia Goth. And Mia Goth just being like, maybe not in this movie very much, but her being like, this was the best thing I've ever done. I'll take this for every movie. I mean, every single person who has talked about their experience on this movie is like, nobody is ready for how mind-blowing this is going to be. So just like that one shot of her and Anne Hathaway, and I was just like, that's Mia Goth, dude. That's crazy.
Incredible pick.
I watched a very nitpicky, like I love when people who know a lot about a specific thing get nitpicky, even if I don't have to like absorb that nitpick. And I will say, I saw like an ancient historical Greek scholar be like, this is why the fashions are off, and this is why Tom Holland drinking out of like a dirty piece of
I saw
pottery is so weird, because of course it would be like new and fresh and nice back in the day. And I liked that analysis, and I was also like, this looks sick. And Hathaway looks great. Mallory, what's your answer here?
Okay, because we're talking about Dunkirk today, this is the quickest I've ever filled out this category, and it is filming on the open sea. And I would like to read you a stretch from the aforementioned Ben Travis Empire piece. Here it is. Quote, such a seismic story required Nolan, every practitioner of practical filmmaking at a grand scale, to level up. Big locations, big stars, big spectacle. Quote, we shot over 2 million feet of film, he reveals, of the 91-day shoot, and much of that was out on the ocean, where Odysseus set sail with his battle-hardened men. It's pretty primal, Nolan laughs, of the open seas. I've been out on it for the last 4 months. We got the cast who play the crew of Odysseus' ship out there on the real waves in the real places, and yeah, it's vast and terrifying and wonderful and benevolent as the conditions shift. We really wanted to capture how hard those journeys would have been for people and the leap of faith that was being made in an unmapped, uncharted world. Our guy is back on the ocean. What more could we want?
The sea, I believe I heard him say the sea is dope there. I think that's what he said.
I agree.
He said benevolent, but what he meant was dope.
But this is the thing I sort of teased in the beginning is that like both of these movies are about going home, about getting home, you know, and it's Inception's about getting home and Interstellar's about getting home. And he has been making this movie his whole career without making this movie. And so just strip it all away and be like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say the thing. I'm going to say the line is pretty great.
That leads me to my answer, which is like we were just talking about this when we were talking about Guillermo del Toro and Frankenstein, right? Like this is the movie that he's been wanting to make. This is the myth that has preoccupied Guillermo del Toro is Frankenstein. So I actually didn't know that Nolan was hired to direct Troy originally, right? But he says there's a bit of everything in it. I mean, it truly contains all story. As a filmmaker, you're looking for gaps in cinematic culture, things that haven't been done before. And what I saw is that of all of this great mythological cinematic work that I'd grown up with, Ray Harryhausen movies and other things, I'd never seen that done with the sort of weight and credibility that an A-budget and a big Hollywood IMAX production could do. So he's like, Odysseus deserves to be seen in the biggest screen possible. And
there's like 10 filmmakers in movie history who could have pulled it off.
I know.
It's like him and Kubrick and Spielberg and David Lean and I don't know, like it's just so amazing that we're going to get this next year.
I'm really excited about it. So as I said, 241 days until The Odyssey premieres. I will say this. I love seeing a Nolan film on the biggest screen possible as he wishes and stuff like that. I remember when Dunkirk came out, you know, I saw it in the theaters a couple times and then I was on a plane and Dunkirk was on the plane and I watched on a plane all the while knowing that Christopher Nolan would be so mad that I watched Dunkirk on a tiny little screen on the back of someone's seat in front of me. But these are the things we do for cinema. Okay. Chris Ryan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Talk about Dunkirk.
Thanks, CR. You're the best, man.
You are the best. Thank you to everyone who worked on this show today. We've got Carlos Chiriboga is here. Arjuna Ramgopowell worked on this. We've got Jomi Adeniran on social. Am I missing anyone, Mallory? Anyone else?
Mike Wargon.
Mike's here. Works here today. I didn't see him. So thank you to everyone. Winston Churchill, here but not here, always in our hearts. And to Mallory Rubin herself and to Chris Nolan. Thanks so much. We will be back for Wicked for Good, and we'll see you then. Bye.